Hello, hello, and welcome back to this week's episode of Yip to My Yap. I'm Sir Erica Star, and today I'm teaching you guys a lesson that I learned the hard way. It is okay to end a friendship if you don't like their perception of you. And already, this sounds bratty. I know this already sounds like, that's a little picky and choosy, but I can explain. Um, this is not about someone not liking you because you did something wrong and you're like, I don't like that you don't like that I did something wrong and you ending friendships. It's not like that. This is long term. This is something that happens over a span of months, years, decades, even for some people. And I actually organized this one into a nicely put episode, and I feel like my thoughts will be a lot less scattered for this one. So hang on. So let's bring it back to my perception of being perceived. I never understood what people meant when they said, I don't like being perceived. When people talked about, doing content and they're like, yeah, like content sounds cool and all, but I don't like the idea of being perceived. People who seem to love themselves, seem to like themselves, seem to, really enjoy who they are and shrivel at the idea of being perceived. And I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? Because for me, I always thought of being perceived as just like strangers creating ideas about me and not caring what they think because they're strangers. That's literally the only way I have ever thought about the idea of being perceived. So to me, that has always been something that isn't worth my time. It's not worth thinking about. It's, out of sight, out of mind. I don't know you. You don't know me. How can I put any value to the words that you're saying if you don't know who I am, right? Things get a little bit different when the perception comes from people you know. And I don't think I have ever before been put in a situation, at least this dramatic, where someone has had perceptions of me and I was blind to it. Usually, when people have perceptions of me, I clock it really fast and I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What happened there? A conversation is had, everything's cleared up, we can stay friends. That's how things usually go, with me. Um, But I've realized that there will be people in your life who will be perceiving you and creating stories about you and, just create this world where you are the villain. And that is so okay. You will always be the villain in somebody's story. You'll always be, the main character in yours. You might be a side character in someone else's. That part's okay. But being a villain in someone else's is just like, damn. Like, I'd rather be the villain in somebody else's story and know what I did, take accountability for what I did, and be like, damn, that was just a really fucked up chapter. But for some people, you can do your best. You can try to be a great friend. You can try to go out of your way to do a million and one things to make people feel good, to make people feel nice, to make people feel included, all this stuff. And they won't see it. And that's okay. That is okay. That is the part that I had to learn. Because you just can't keep fighting to be a part of somebody else's life when they don't want you in it. Or they, like I said, they've already painted you to be someone else. So I learned this. I've learned bits of this from a very young age. And one memory that always sticks out, this has always been something that me and my mom talk about like on a regular basis when it comes to just like our little memories of me as a kid and stuff. We would always go to the nail salon, she would bring me along because I had to tag along to everything. And I remember she was getting her nails done, and every time she didn't like the way they were doing something, like if they did the French tip wrong or like the acrylic was too thick or whatever was going on, she would tell her to make adjustments. She'd be like, hey, I don't like that. Like, this isn't the color that I wanted, or this isn't the shape that I wanted, or I'm not feeling this, And I feel like almost every time I went with her to get her nails done, like there was always something that she was like, can you fix that? And I used to always look at her and tell her like, oh my God, you're so bossy. You're so bossy. And that was the word I used all the time. But obviously I'm like 5 years old. I don't know many words. And she would always say, no, I'm not bossy. I'm assertive. And that was the beginning of perception for me. And she always, kind of drilled it into my mind that it is okay to be an assertive woman. Being bossy has a negative connotation. Being assertive, equals power and equals strength and, all that good stuff. So that was the beginning of it. And I'm just going to go through things in my life moments in my life where I've been perceived a certain way. And I'm not stating a case for why I'm not that thing, but I'm going to tell you what they saw and how they took it that way. So, one criticism, I don't even know if this is a criticism. This is just something that one of my exes said about me post breakup that I was like, damn, this is what you're telling people after the fact. He said, she's so Disney, bro. That is a direct quote. She's so Disney, bro. And I always thought about like, damn, like what does that even mean? Because I like Disney. Disney's good. Disney's fun. Disney's magical. Disney's youthful. And that is exactly what he meant about me. That was so Disney. He never liked that I saw the bright side of things, that I always said there was a solution to things, because he was someone who didn't wasn't exactly the most ambitious person, didn't exactly have his head on straight, all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, but if you try and you put in the hard work and da da da, all that stuff, you can get the job done on my Bob the Builder shit. And he always like he couldn't stand when I did that. He was just like, Erica, like be realistic, be realistic. I not gonna lie, I probably am not the most realistic person out there. I have big dreams and I believe I'll fulfill them. But that is what he saw, and he decided to label it as Disney and say it in a negative way. Somebody else can say that it might mean something positive, but this is all perception. So I am okay with the person that I am. I love the person I am, and I acknowledged his description of me and was like, you know what? I don't care that you say that, because I like that part about me. So that was a time when, perception had more to do with the way the person viewed the very true, um, the very true description of who I am. So that was my first touch of it. And I was like, okay. And it bothered me that like this person would try to persuade other people that it's a negative thing. And if that's his crowd, that's his crowd. But that is one part of my life that was a little twisted. Um, Another thing that people say about me, they say that I am entitled and spoiled. Cold hard facts. My parents loved me. My parents worked really hard growing up, um, to succeed in life and all that good stuff. I came into the picture. They both locked in, did what they had to do, got great jobs, all that stuff. And even if money wasn't like flowing in and stuff, I had everything I needed. I had everything I needed and more. I grew up always having everything that I needed and everything that I wanted. I was always fed. I was always healthy. I always had all the toys. I always had the latest everything. My dad always tells a story, and I'm sure I've said this on the podcast before, but he always tells a story of how like he would get all his boys from the block or whatever to come with him with freaking garbage bags, like the Disney stores and all the toy stores, and just fill them up with a bunch of stuff for me. And then he would come to my house, and it was like Merry Christmas every weekend. So that's just how I grew up. And what I will say, yes, that has tweaked my mindset in a way where I feel like I deserve everything that I work for, because they worked for everything that they have. But because I got everything that I didn't work for as a baby and as like a toddler, child, even middle schooler, whatever, people like to assume that I'm an entitled spoiled brat and that I didn't work for anything that I have. So that is something I've heard probably my whole life. But at the same time, people like to ignore the part where I got straight A's in school and I was salutatorian in high school, and that, I graduated with a high GPA in college, and that I worked hard to get my first job, and that I didn't have to pay for college because I got a full scholarship. Like, people love to ignore those things. And this all, you know, um, this all supports the idea of perception, because people will see what they want to see, they'll hear what they want to hear, and they will grow ideas out of the seeds that they created. So, I this by no means is me just trying to flaunt what I have and stuff, but these are things that people have said about me and that people say, and that I have learned to just kind of, turn the other cheek to, because it's just projection. Because why would you say that I'm entitled? Why would you say that I'm entitled and that I'm spoiled and that I'm a brat for having things and all that, even though I worked for a lot of the things I have, when you can do the same. You want to ignore that you can work hard and that you can do all the things to get you to a place that you want to be, to have all the things that you want, but you'd rather call me spoiled and entitled, Like, that's what it's looking like. And I've learned to be at peace with that. Um, Another thing people like to say is that I expect too much from people. Perception, 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 perception. I don't expect too much from people. I don't believe I expect too much from people. And this is perception against perception, Like, they think that. I don't think that. I don't think I expect too much. I think I expect equal effort. And this is where worldviews start clashing, because some people don't view friendships that way. Some people don't view relationships that way. Some people don't view, just interpersonal relationships that way. I do. So when you tell me I expect too much from people, once again, it means nothing to me. It just kind of, I don't care because I know the world that I live in. If you don't want to be a part of it, if you don't want to interact in my world in the way that I have set it up in my very peaceful bubble, then we don't have, there's 8 billion people in the world. You don't have to interact with me. So I'm just letting you guys know the way that I fight perception because these are all the ways that it's hit me and never really bothered me up until, the final way that I'll explain it. Some people say that I'm intense and that I'm too much. My immediate response has always been, well, maybe you're not enough, like that it all goes into what I think of myself and what I think of the people around me and those I surround myself with. Um, and then another one, I used to get this one a lot. Girl, you doing too much. And by doing too much, they meant like the clothes I wear, the way I do my makeup, the way I do my hair, everything. And I'm just like, whoa, 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 we're doing too much. I've got a, what is it? I've got an excitement for life, for creativity, for self-expression. And I'm going to express myself in whichever way I please. And for those of you who listen to the podcast, you know that this is just me. So once again, doing too much, I'm like, maybe I'll embrace it. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So all this is to say, people create a version of you in your head, and then they react to that version. And then their actions snowball over a long, period of time. If you're lucky, it's a short one, but it's usually a long period of time. And you just get very uncomfortable being around these people. And I don't know, man, the situation I've encountered recently is one where someone has had a perception of me. Usually, like I said, people have a perception of me and they explain their perception of me, or it comes to light in a certain point early in friendship, relationship, whatever. We talk about it. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm sorry you thought that of me. This is why. And if we still clash heads after I explain why things are the way they are or why they might have perceived it, or they explain, what they maybe heard beforehand or whatever, like if we start clashing heads, we don't have to interact anymore. And that's okay. My issue is when people are in my life for a very long time and I let them in a decent amount. They know a lot of the ongoings in my life, and they made their decision on who I was the first day they met me. And then they just put every situation in my life into that frame of who they wanted me to be, or whatever story they wanted me to fit. And that's when things get messy. That's when things get very, very messy. Because in friendships like that, when they end, it's never one big argument. It's always just like this uneasy feeling being around people who are perceiving you in the wrong way. And for me, when I start realizing that someone is perceiving me in a certain way, I try to not make it obvious that I'm noticing, because the world doesn't revolve around me. And for all you know, they just had a bad day. They just had a bad week. For all I know, they're not even thinking about me, and I'm the last thing on their mind. So I'm not assuming that you're thinking of me. But when patterns start happening, and it's just like, okay, why does it just so happen that every time I do something or I say something that might cause a minor inconvenience to you, you blow it up. You blow it up every time. And when other people do it, it's like, I could let that slide because that's not who they are. They're not like that. They wouldn't do that to me. But when I do the same thing that someone you perceive positively would, you think that I did it with the intention of malice and to hurt you and, to be the evil person that you want me to be. That's what I don't like, because I don't know. I'm not in your head. So I don't understand how many times I have done things without thinking of you, because I think, once again, it's all perception. It's like I expect the least of people in terms of like them thinking about me and all that, because as much as I talk about my world and my bubble and stuff, you have your world and your bubble. And I am not significant in your bubble, and I'm okay with that, but I'm significant as fuck in mine. And so then I'm put in a weird spot where I'm like, damn, I don't want to assume. I don't want to think that you're thinking about me this hard. So when I find out that you are, it fucks with my head. It fucks with my head so bad. I hate it. It's a yucky feeling. I hate knowing that people are creating thought pieces on the person that I am instead of just asking me questions. You ask your friends questions. When you wonder things about your friends, you ask questions, even if they're uncomfortable questions, because if they're your friend, you want to know things, like just random deep stuff about them. You ever laying in bed and you're like, I wonder why this person is like that. Ask them. You have access to them. Ask a question. If they get defensive and they don't want to answer, that's okay too. And now you know that is a touchy subject. It is very easy to, if someone is your friend, it is very easy to communicate and speak. And a lot of people don't do that. And that's why perceptions and, the idea of being perceived and all that, it's such like a hot topic and stuff because it's all in your head. It's all in your head. And if you don't speak, no one's gonna know what the fuck is going on in there. So, yeah. That leads me to my next point where I have mixed reviews actually from people, but okay, the mixed review is that some people say, Erica, damn, you're quick to cut people off. And the other mixed review is like, damn, you hold on to people for a while, like you give them a lot of chances. Now, what it really is that right smack in the middle, it's just that when I decide that I'm going to cut you off and that we will not be friends anymore, I will disappear from your life. The only way that I will be in your life is if you thought of me or if you looked for me. But once I'm gone, I'm gone. And it's easy for me to do that because I deal with, friendships and relationships in the way that it'll build up in my head and I'll talk about it and I'll express concerns. And if those concerns and needs aren't met, then I just take it as a sign of you not caring about me enough, at least not in the way I care about you. And I will see my way out because it's very easy to do that. It is so easy to just kind of disappear. Like I don't need the closure talk. I don't need any of that. I can just go. So people love saying like, damn, Erica, like you don't care about anybody. Like if you could do it. I'm like, no. I've thought about this. When I end any friendship, I thought about it and I cried about it. And I talked to my boyfriend about it. I talked to my mom about it. And I'm just like, yeah, it's okay. The council agrees. Like, I don't need this anymore. So yeah, I am quick to cut people off that don't feel right. It feels quick in the moment because I don't speak bad on anyone. I do not speak poorly on any person that I consider a friend, an acquaintance, anyone that I have connection to. Like, and this isn't to say I always have mean things to say about people, but I have had best friends who like, physical traits or whatever, maybe they're not fit or maybe they're bald or maybe, like just random things about them that I would never point out. I would never acknowledge because it's not my job to acknowledge until we are no longer in connection with one another. And does this mean that as soon as I'm not friends with someone that I start talking shit? No. But I don't mind acknowledging it afterwards. If I'm telling a story to someone else and they want to, add on and be negative or whatever, I'll be like, yeah, that's true. But I don't have to go into it further. But I would have never acknowledged it at all if we were friends. So I say that to say the reason it always feels like I cut people off really fast is because I don't say bad things about people before the friendship ends. I think that's what it is. I don't say anything actually that makes people look bad before the friendship ends because whatever we have between you and I is between you and I. Like I do this in relationships too. Like I am not going to make my boyfriend look bad to my friends when explaining something to them. I will tell the story. I'll say the facts for what they are, but I'm not going to add stuff that makes him look bad. You know what I mean? Like I can have a disagreement with my boyfriend and I can explain it to my friend and I will say everything as is. I'm not going to omit information, but I'm not going to add these embellishments that make him look like a shitty person. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do that with my friends either. So to really back in, the reason people think that I cut people off so fast is just because when I'm done, I'm done. And I only say good things up until the point of the end of the friendship. And after that, I'm just relaying information. And however which way that makes you look to the audience is how it makes you look. Like, I saw this thing online where it's like, it's not talking shit if you're telling the story and saying things as they were. If you're just pulling out receipts, that's not talking shit. It's just proof. With that said, I think it's important to note that cutting people off doesn't always come from a place of anger. It comes from a place of clarity. It comes from self-reflection, understanding what you need in your life, what type of friends you want around, what type of circle you want to water, and deciding, like I don't care to keep you around. And it's very honest. It always sounds fucked up. It never sounds nice. Like cutting people off never sounds positive. But it is what it is. And the worst part of keeping people around who don't align with your goals and your life and who you are and the way that you treat people is the internal conflict. That is the part. Like that when I said that I think about it a lot before I cut someone off, what I'm talking about is my thoughts where I think like, am I overreacting? And that, goes to me saying like, maybe they're not thinking about me at all. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I think they're thinking about me too much and they're not. Maybe that's, it's the reverse end. Or me thinking like, should I explain myself? And that is the part that bothers me the most, dealing with people who are choosing to perceive you in the wrong way, because you should not have to explain yourself to your friends. If you consider someone a friend, obviously, you guys got to know each other, you understand who each other is and whatever. You're at a certain point in the friendship. You should not have to explain who you are or set a case, try to make up a case as to how you're a good person. You should not have to do that. When you have friends, your friends should always know where you're coming from, because you guys communicate, because you guys hang out together, because you guys have been in social situations where your character has been made, crystal clear. So when you'll know that you have a friend who isn't exactly perceiving you in the right light at all times, when you start mentally thinking like, okay, I'm going to tell this story, but it sucks because I have to give all this extra context about my character so that they can understand where I'm coming from. And if they're your friend, they should have known that already. They should know who you are. My thing is, when you make friends based on their character. You are friends with people who you like. You are friends with likable people, at least, subjective to whatever you consider likable. So there is no reason that you should have to explain, like, I did this because I'm a sensitive person. I did this, or I thought about this because I don't know, because I'm an overthinker. Like, you shouldn't have to explain those little bits when telling stories. And if you feel like you have to, that is not your friend. I think that is, yeah. I hate talking about this kind of stuff because friends are iffy as an adult. And this is why. This is literally why. Perceptions are a thing. People are grown. People make choices. You don't make mistakes like you do as a kid. And it's like, oh my God, I thought that you invited this person to the dance because you like them more than me. And really, it's just because. No, we're adults. Communicate, talk, use your words. And another part of that internal conflict that I was talking about is just asking yourself the question, is this even worth fixing? Because when you are a loving person and you want everyone to be happy and you want to be, a part of a friend group or a part of a relationship or whatever, you a lot of the time just fix things for the sake of fixing things. And then it gets to a point where you're like, is this worth fixing? Do I want to be a part of this? Am I fixing this for us, or am I fixing this for our community, for other people? And that's when you just got to make your decisions and realize like, whoa, 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 whoa. We have too little years on this earth and too little time, just too little everything to be making accommodations for people who shouldn't be in your life. So yeah, I don't put myself in situations where I have to convince someone of who I am. You should have read me and asked questions and clarified and got everything you needed to know within like the first year of our friendship, year of our relationship, and move accordingly after that. And with that, I've also learned I just have less patience. I'm 26, I have less patience. I don't care to nurture things or fix things or mend things. Like, no. I've had friendships that have lasted 10 plus years that didn't need crazy fixing. You know what I mean? Like, nothing was ever broken. Maybe we just needed more time together. Maybe we just needed more conversations, whatever. But it's not hard to keep a friendship with me. So, yeah, that is that. I have no patience. But long story short, if someone's perception of you feels so off from who you actually are, just dead them. Just dead them. And it sucks because you really won't know someone else's perception of you until you hear them talk about you to another person, until you hear them assume something of you in conversation with you, like, oh yeah, you would totally do that. And you're like, you don't know me at all. I wouldn't do that, actually. That's not me. Like, it sucks. When you find out what somebody thinks of you, it's never in a situation that's planned. It's never a talk that you can plan. It's never anything. It's not you can ask them what you think about me, because obviously they're going to walk on eggshells or just try to make sure that whatever they're saying doesn't come off disgusting, like if that's how they feel about you. But yeah, and that's another thing to say, people who perceive too much and people who make up stories and people who make decisions on who other people are before getting to know them are all people who are projecting. Like, you have so many thoughts that you can't even let someone else show their truth. That's what it is. So, if you're someone who's projecting or someone who tends to do that, cut it out. Cut it out. You're making life harder for everyone. Um, you're making the world a worse place. That's my cue to stop. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This was my rant on perception, and I hope it resonated with some of you guys. I know I said at the beginning that this was going to be structured and organized, and I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was. I got to do these solo episodes better, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Please give 5 stars if your listening platform allows you to do so. Please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on Missing the Sunset 13 on TikTok and Missing the Sunset on Instagram, and obviously Yip to My App on all listening platforms, and Instagram at Yip to My App. That is all for you guys. I love you guys, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.